Happy Thursday, and welcome here to another edition of Husker Online Headlines. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple. We're here every week, and again, Husker Online Headlines this week brought to you by our friends at Zipline Brewing. If you haven't done it, get out, pick up a six-pack of their brand new release beer, ZipLite, 95 calories, 2.7 carbs. Also check out their new restaurant here in Lincoln. They've got a great spot in the Fallbrook neighborhood with food and drink. That's Zipline Brewing Company, tasting rooms, and now a restaurant all over the Omaha and Lincoln areas. And we're proud to be linked up with Zipline here on the Husker Online Headline Show. But let's get into it. Headline number one, Steve Sipple, for Nebraska. Things remain in somewhat of a recruiting holding pattern. We're pushing now 2 weeks since the Malcolm Simpson commitment. Now, they did get Mekhi Nelson, and they did get Jalen Gramstad, but these are 2024 additions to the roster. In terms of 2025 commits, Malcolm Simpson on June 16th was the last commit for the Huskers. And, you know, there's a lot of pieces still in play, a lot of things moving. I do think Jeremiah Jones is the one to watch for Monday. He's going to make an announcement. I'd say Nebraska's in a great position there. Bryson Weber, the corner out of Texas. At least we thought Nebraska was in a great position. The Hawaiian lineman, Houston Kahani Torres, will make his announcement here in the coming days. So there's a lot of things in play. The in-state guys, Chase Lofton, Christian Jones, Brian Tapu, the latest thing as well this week, announced his decommitment after 3 days to Oregon State. And his Oregon State commit was a shock because I think a lot of us thought he was committing to Nebraska. When he left the trip here, when Nebraska flew his family in from New Zealand and everything went great in Lincoln, it felt like he was going to be a Husker. But Brian Tapu has reopened things back up after 3 days of being a commit to Oregon State.
So Nebraska's holding at 11 verbal commitments for the class of 2025. It lost Dawson Merritt to Alabama. I thought Nebraska had a shot at him. That would have added some oomph. I think the class, I mean, it'd be really okay. Premature, probably overreacting to panic at this point. I mean, it's not going to be a very big class, right?
No, I mean, I think it could get up to 20, but
okay. Now, here's the thing. It could use some oomph. Oomph could come in the form of a Tapu because it needs an offensive lineman. A highly rated offensive lineman would make you feel better.
And Tapu right now today would be the fourth highest ranked commit in the class.
That'd be good
if they added him. So
that'd be
once again, there was a notion that Nebraska never told they wanted him. Like they've always wanted him. I mean, he's a 6'8" tackle. I think the one snag though is he's LDS, so he does plan to go on a mission.
Okay.
So you wouldn't get him immediately.
Right.
He'd go away for 2 years.
Bryson Weber obviously is alluring. He's a 6'3", 185-pound corner from Missouri City, Texas. Has some pretty good offers. A 6'3", 185-pound corner always looks good. Jeremiah Jones, 6'5", 217. That would look good. And those are pretty good bets. So I don't know, Sean. I kind of understand some of the consternation that people have right now.
It's the O-line, I think, is probably like S.J. Alfalatui visited Miami, and now he's a strong lean to the Hurricanes after he visited the Bishop Gorman offensive lineman that was here. Okay. I think the two in-state pieces, Christian Jones.
Well, those are big. Oh, yeah, that would help. Getting Lofton.
And Lofton. I mean, right. I think those two, Braden Lofton, those two are big, and you don't have a great read or feel.
Don't you have a good feel on Chase Lofton or no? You don't?
I mean, I just was speaking to one of my good friends that covers Missouri, and I think Missouri feels like they're in a good position, and they felt and Missouri feels like A&M is the competition.
Wow.
So I think there's a lot there.
Huh.
And by the way, A&M, Missouri, big NIL pockets. Yeah. Big.
Right. So Chase Lofton and Christian Jones, I mean, those are your top two players. Now, I don't know it's probably debatable which one you'd slot one and which one you slot two, but they're your top two players.
In the state. Now, Nebraska likes.
The state, that's what I mean.
Will Hawthorne and Christian Jones play the same position, and I would say that Matt Rule likes Will Hawthorne equally as much as Christian Jones. I mean, they're kind of the same guy. They're both 6'2", they're about 220. They both run 10-9. So there's a lot there with Will Hawthorne that they're very high on, and that's a battle between Nebraska and Iowa State. But yeah, they're at this 11 spot. You'd like to see them trickle above 15 here, get to about 16 or 17, and then you'd feel good about it. And why the panic? Because recruiting's pretty much done, and we're going to get into that on the recruiting calendar changes. But June and July are so important to kind of get your work done.
I get it.
There is no more recruiting.
I know, but
this is it. Like,
I hate to think that there's panic. I'm telling you, what would let's get somewhere with this conversation. What would alleviate panic? Getting Jones or Lofton would help. Getting Tapu or an offensive lineman would help. And then I would say getting either Weber or Jones or both. And then I think it's alleviated right there.
Well, and the reality is this: Nebraska's not had a winning season since 2016. There's a price you pay for that eventually.
Absolutely.
And you can only sell hope and optimism for so many years in a row.
Right.
Right.
No, you're right. They got and look at what they have selling it.
I mean, they've squeezed the lemon on this.
But they have one of the best salesmen that I've seen in Matt Rule. I mean, he's a tremendous salesman. And this is not, an overwhelming endorsement on Matt Rule as a coach. There's a lot left to see here. But as a salesman, if he ever went into sales, he'd make a zillion dollars, right? Because he's a very good salesman. So that helps. I'm using the word alleviate a little too much in this.
You
round.
like that one today. You kind of brought that to your toolbox today.
Rule helps alleviate a lot of my concerns. And also, Sean, we have to give voice to this. In this day and age, if you come up a little short in your recruiting class, there's always the transfer portal down the line. Right?
Well, and the other reason I know people want to get worked up because it's what's going on now, but Steve Sipple, there's 80 freshmen on the roster next year.
Right.
True freshmen, 80
freshmen, true freshmen and redshirt freshmen.
Yeah.
That's
80.
a lot. Yeah.
I mean, that's more players than Colorado has on its entire roster.
77.
I mean, the number of 18, 19-year-olds on this team.
Right.
I mean, you would think it's like 1976 when they had like a freshman team.
Monty Kiffin.
Are they gonna hire like Paul Amaji and Ty Wisdom to coach the freshman team here? I mean, like back in the day, they hired like
Bill Bush and Jerry Godowski.
Coach the I mean, Tim Yonk come coach the. I mean, they have so many freshmen on this team. Like, they legitimately could have a freshman team.
They could. That's odd to think about, but yeah. So you use the word panic. I'm not. There's no panic here. Do you sense panic among some fans? Are you seeing on the message boards or what? What are you seeing?
Just some uneasiness because Dawson Merritt was a tough blow, especially, and I'll say this now, like he visited Nebraska after Alabama the next week. He was here and he picked Alabama. So that was promising. Like, okay, he's in Lincoln again, but at the end of the day, it was a business decision. I think
was it?
Alabama is a better, safer bet for a player right now.
It is. I thought you meant an NIL.
Not NIL, but like from development and draft. And
it is.
Everyone's going to get money now. Like when these teams get $22 million in-house to pay with collectives, you can't even talk. I mean, it's like, the money shouldn't even be that important at that point because it's going to be there for everybody.
Goes back to, good point. It goes back to what you said. It's time to start winning.
Yeah. I mean, you could only sell, this is what we're going to do. And that's why the first 7 games of this year, the first 2 months of the season are going to be huge. Because
think about what we're saying, though, Sean. I'm sorry to interrupt, but think about it. Are we putting pressure on Matt Rule to win? It's year 2. It's year 2, and he's got 80 freshmen on the roster. Are we really putting pressure?
Well, we're putting pressure because the schedule's great. This is the Big Ten.
Right.
You might have to play Michigan, Oregon, and Ohio State in the same year. They're not going to have that this year.
We're putting pressure on him from the standpoint of it's hard to build these recruiting classes based on hope, like you're saying, just optimism, sales, just trust us. When it comes down to it, the best players, if they have Texas sitting there and Alabama sitting there and Oregon sitting there and Georgia sitting there, they're going to say, well, look what they're doing. I mean, it's a safer bet. The parents will look at it. A lot of the guardians, parents, whoever handlers Safer bet.
Well, and they need Raiola to be what we think he can be.
It's a big piece
because he can elevate this thing up, and that becomes an ultimate sales point. Like, but it's a lot of pressure to put on a young guy. But you look at their schedule. I go back to this point. There's 4 teams right now considered playoff level in the Big Ten, at least 4. But it's Oregon, it's Ohio State, it's Michigan, it's Penn State. How many of those does Nebraska play this year? 1.
Yeah. No, there's no question that the schedule is forgiving. I mean, you got to make some hay. Now,
Iowa, don't sleep on Iowa. Like, they think they can be a 10-2 team there, and I don't disagree with that. Like, they have a lot of defenders coming back, a lot of O-linemen coming back, and they should have better quarterback play. They have to have better quarterback play.
Nebraska, we know, can go toe-to-toe with Iowa, though.
They've done it every year.
Right.
I mean, that's what's, I think, maddening if you're a Nebraska fan. Like, Iowa has had your number for the better part of the last 10 years.
Right. And Wisconsin.
But it's not like the talent level is that far ahead. I mean, they're right there with them. They just have never been able to finish these games off.
Yeah, and there you go. We don't need to go there.
No, that's a whole rabbit hole.
Well, the close game thing is people don't want to hear it anymore. I mean,
all right, before we take it to headline number 2, thank you for joining us here on HuskerOnline Headlines, brought to you by Zipline Brewing Company, ZipLite beer, their newest release, also brought to you by Ellerbrock-Norris. They've been helping Nebraska business owners protect their purpose for over 120 years. With risk management solutions built for local businesses, Ellerbrock-Norris partners with you on commercial insurance, group benefits, business exit planning, safety, and more. Start thinking long-term with your business and create a risk management strategy to protect it. Are your employee benefit costs going through the roof? Talk to Ellerbrock. Are workplace injuries skyrocketing your workers' compensation costs? Talk to Ellerbrock. Hoping to retire in the next 10 years and sell the business to key family, key employees, or even a friendly competitor? Talk to Ellerbrock. Ellerbrock-Norris is helping you protect your purpose, whether it's your business and your employees in it, your life outside of work, or your future retirement goals. Head to ellerbrock-norris.com/HuskerOnline today to get your free risk evaluation. All right, headline number 2, and I think this one's been pretty interesting to follow this week.
Oh, yeah.
Trev Alberts. Need I say more? He left Lincoln kind of in a really unorthodox fashion. I mean, I'll never forget that week. We interviewed him on HuskerOnline Headlines on this very show on a Thursday, if I'm not mistaken, during State Boys Basketball Tournament Week. And we asked him off air, are you going to go down to the women's basketball tournament to watch Nebraska women's? He's like, no. I got something on my schedule. You know how that stuff goes. Well, he interviewed at Texas A&M. A week later, he was gone. And that hit Nebraska fans and state leaders, governors, regents like a bag of bricks.
Because he spoke about loyalty. One of his big themes as a leader, and probably picked up from the leadership books that he read, was the importance of loyalty. And he showed no loyalty. I mean, he showed none. He just left early in a tenure. And
with the greatest contract ever assembled for an athletic director.
It's still very odd. And he went to a place where he's not known. I mean, nobody cares about Trev Alberts winning the Buckus Award in 1993. I mean, they don't care. They don't even know. It was a kind of a sort of an odd circumstance. And now he's really hit some rugged waters. I mean, with the Schlossnagle situation.
I was waiting for you to try to take an attempt at Schlossnagle.
Jim Schlossnagle, who, now we'll get into this Trev Alberts part of this discussion, which is, I don't know. I would say this about Schlossnagle. And Sean, you've covered college sports for a long time. The popularity of coaches tends to ebb and flow, right? The likability factor for coaches ebbs and flows. Jim Schlossnagle's likability factor flowed right into the gutter. I mean, there's who likes him now? I mean,
well, and the way he went after that Texags young reporter, and then did you see his apology statement?
Horrible apology.
And he referred to him as a young reporter.
Yeah.
Like, no, he's a grown man. He's covering the team. He's not a kid. Like,
I totally agree.
Like, that was like it was
not a good. It was. You know what he did? He kind of made an excuse. He goes, I was thinking about. It was 30 minutes after the game, and I was thinking about my players. No, you weren't. First of all, you weren't.
I talked to somebody in College Station very tied into the baseball scene down there. And he said he got upset because he about pulled it off. Like he was hoping to get off that stage and pull this off.
And he didn't.
Kind of like a Baltimore Colts leaving Baltimore in the middle of the night.
Yeah, and he sort of had the gall to turn it on the reporter and say, that's a selfish question. Oh, wow. This is what I mean. It's a really, really bad look for Schlossnagle. Now, getting to Trev. How does Trev fit into all this? I don't know that I could point to Trev Alberts in any meaningful way and say this is his fault.
Well, it might be, though, because they let go of 18 longtime Aggie athletic department officials, people that work there. Something similar that we saw down here at Nebraska.
He was probably directed to do that.
Yeah, but he did it. And a couple of those people were tied to the baseball program. Right, and one of them I know particularly really upset Schlossnagle, and that was kind of the final straw.
That could be a factor. Again, I don't know that I think Trev might be in an unfortunate circumstance. Now,
why would there be money problems in College Station?
I don't know.
I mean, they literally presented the 12th Man Foundation presented Jimbo Fisher's buyout check on the field.
I just wonder how much of that he decided, or if it was just decided by people above him, Trev.
Yeah, sometimes I think he's still the athletic director.
It's true. He's in charge.
He's in charge.
He's in charge. And this happened on his watch. Now that's the one thing I would say. All of this went down on his watch. And then there's that report by Kendall Rogers of D1Baseball.com that it all started in late April, that the deal may have been done going into regionals. Kendall Rogers didn't report that it may have been done. He reported that it was done. Trev had been there for over a month at that point.
Well, and Chris Del Conte, the AD of Texas, was the AD at TCU.
That's the other
thing. And Schlossnagle came from TCU.
Right, they're friends.
And they're best friends.
Yeah, I mean.
So, it's kind of like Matt Rule and Kraft at Penn State. Like, he's very close to that.
Oh, great. You had to.
No, but there's a relationship there, that goes back with those two guys.
Schlossnagle refers to him as my man CDC. My man CDC, Chris Del Conte. It's interesting to me that coaches down there refer to him as the Texas coaches refer to him as CDC.
How do you get Chris Del what's the C then?
CDC. Chris Del Conte.
Because there's a space in Del and Conte.
Yeah.
Okay.
Southo
spelling test here on the air live.
Your mom is aghast right now. Chris Del Conte. But anyway,
remember when people thought he was up for the Nebraska job?
Del Conte.
Yeah, he never was. I
don't think so.
Well, there was somebody that went on our website and said that they saw him in Lincoln the day Bill Moose got hired. And I'm pretty sure they got him confused with Dennis LeBlanc.
He kind of looks like Dennis LeBlanc.
And
they do. They look
I gave this user was adamant that he saw Chris Del Conte at the Nebraska game back. And no, he's not. And then Bill Moose was hired the next day. But
so the theme of this is Trev's in a you-know-what show. He is. It's a tough situation. Schlossnagle comes out of this looking bad. Now, Sean, you could correct me on this. Everybody's going to root against Texas. I mean,
the evil empire.
Oh, they look. Now, it was a flex by Del Conte for sure. Major league.
Supposedly a 10-year contract, I heard.
Oh, great.
That would obviously make him the highest paid coach throughout the 10 years in college baseball.
Yeah, I guess.
His deal will get north of $3 million, I'm told.
Yeah, and he goes to the winningest program in college baseball history, Texas. Texas has had 3 coaches, Sean, with 2 national titles apiece. I can name 2 of them, Cliff Gustafson and Augie Garrido. There's a third back in the day.
Back when you covered your early days.
No, Sean, it was before me. But anyway, this has really been a good thing for sports talk like us in a kind of a slow time, June. This story has really taken hold. It's interesting.
Yeah, and people have asked, would Trev Alberts call Will Bolt? And no knock on Will. I don't think that's even a possibility. I think when you lose a guy that was a play away from winning a national title, the interest you're going to have in that job is high.
You would think.
The money you're going to have is high. So they're going to have to get a sitting SEC or ACC head coach.
Yeah, Trev's got and Trev doesn't have a vast network of
baseball.
College baseball.
Well, how many coaches has Trev Alberts hired that make over $1 million a year? One, Matt Rule.
Wow.
And he needed the assistance of Ted Carter to get that done.
He needed a lot of assistance in that one. He did.
So
he did. Let's just be very frank about it. You know it, Sean. We covered.
Besides, I was thinking about Rule is the only coach. Did Trev hire any other coach at Nebraska besides Rule? I think everybody else is Moose.
Yeah. Unless there was some
lower level tennis coach or something
like that.
But I'm talking the major coaches were already in place when he got here. Basketball, baseball, volleyball.
What a story. I mean, this is why is it amazing? Because you don't see coaches go very often from a hated rival to the other rival.
Hours after the national.
You don't see a Duke coach go to North Carolina.
Think if they would have won the title.
I don't know what he does then. I mean, he already took the job, I think. I mean,
that would have been nasty.
Well, yeah, let's talk that out, Sean. I think it might have been easier for Schlossnagle to leave after he won a national
My job
title.
is done here.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, exactly. I think that would have smoothed it a little bit. It's still rival to rival, and I mean hated rival to hated rival. I've told you this story when Nebraska moved to the Big 12, they sent me and Ken Hamilton to Texas, and we went to each school in Texas. It was, Big 12 school, just to do stories on them, Sunday stories, do long form stories about their tradition and everything. And I went to Austin the day after I went to College Station. I was having lunch with a bunch of Texas officials, and we were eating at a Mexican restaurant on 6th Street. It was fun until this happened. They said, "Steve, where were you yesterday?" And I said, "I was in College Station." They looked down at their plates. It was uncomfortable. It was really uncomfortable. You had to kind of just go to the next subject. It was, and that was it was kind of an error on my part, not to read it like that, but there is a serious rivalry there.
And A&M strikes me as more kind of the traditional cowboy, blue collar.
I think so, yeah.
Military presence. And Texas is kind of the fancier bells and whistle.
Richer. Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, they refer to Texas A&M as little brother. I mean, Texas A&M is kind of like the little brother. They don't like that, obviously.
Well, that will be interesting to see
how that all plays out.
Trev Alberts goes. All right, before we take things to headline number 3, HuskerOnline headlines, again, brought to you by Zipline Brewing, and particularly the new ZipLite beer, 95 calories, under 3 carbs. Give it a try. It's out in stores now. If you can't find it at your favorite grocery store, just head up to any one of the Zipline beer halls or brewery locations in Omaha and Lincoln. They'll have plenty of supply there. That's ZipLite. Also, Steve Sipple, brought to you by Babbel. And, learning a foreign language has never become more important. If you're trying to go on a trip overseas or you want to learn and get more familiar with Spanish, Babbel is a great program that can help you learn a new language at your own speed. And they offer all these great programs to learn the language of your choice. 10-minute lessons, lots of experts to kind of help you navigate and through learn these new languages. And we got a great deal. If you're interested in trying to learn a new language, we got a deal for our HuskerOnline listeners. Limited time though only. They're going to give you 60% off a Babbel subscription. And this is just for our listeners at babbel.com/Husker. That's babbel.com/Husker. And you'll get 60% off to try out Babbel it's a great way to pick up and learn a new language. Thank you to Babbel for sponsoring us here.
Well, Sean, I would say this. We've had trouble with the English language in this show.
Hey, and I'm married to a Cuban. So my mother-in-law is a former Spanish teacher. And, I find myself, we go down to Florida all the time. I need to learn a little bit more Spanish.
You need to brush up.
I need to brush up. My Portuguese classes at UNL didn't get me very far.
No.
But
I'd just say didn't help you.
Headline 3. NCAA rules have kind of come down the pipeline here. 2 particularly we want to hit on here. Unlimited coaches now in college football, unlimited paid coaches, and some recruiting calendar changes. Let's first start with the coaching change rule, because this is one that I think we've been talking about for a good 2-3 months. It's now official. teams can have unlimited paid on-field coaches. So there is really no limit. The timing of it to me is interesting, though, right as players are going to begin to get paid. So, you'd think, oh, these programs are going to have a lot more money to put towards coaches. Maybe not. Maybe a lot of schools are going to have to pump the brakes because they're going to need that money to pay players.
Right. So there's that element. They're also talking about, cutting a roster limit, a roster cap, that doesn't affect this discussion all that much. Now, what people want, Sean, are answers on how Matt Rule is going to handle this. Okay, I'm ready for your answers. Do you have answers?
Well, I think what you do is an NFL model where you have a receivers coach, then an assistant receivers coach, an offensive line coach, an assistant offensive line coach. And they kind of already have some guys in places like that. But essentially, Matt Rule said it best. He goes, we might have 25 O-linemen. And, Donnie can only really work with 15 of them.
Right.
Or, half of them. And then now that assistant O-line coach, his job is to kind of work and develop the other guys.
Evan Cooper has 23 guys in his secondary.
More than 23.
Okay.
It's over 30.
Oh, I thought he said 23.
Over 30.
So he could use an assistant. The critical part of the conversation is still only 10 can go out on the road. 10
for recruiting. That's flexible too, because a coach can have like a medical condition, a surgery, a coaching change, where I feel like spots 9 and 10 of your 10 are always fairly flexible, where you can do things. And I think now it's a matter of who do you send out on the road? And that leads me to my next thought. The recruiting calendar changes because
this is good. The NCAA did something good for a change.
So let's start with what's coming up next. So December, no longer will you have coaches out. It used to be kind of like 2 to 3 weeks on the road with in-home visits. That's going to be now what's called a quiet period. So you can still bring in official visitors. So if you're back having bowl practices and doing things, you'll have kids come in for those.
Okay, now hold on. Stay right there. So they're adding a December quiet period. What they say is it's intended to allow teams to focus on the football postseason while also allowing on-campus recruiting activities. I've been clamoring for that for years.
Because usually what would happen is you'd have to build your bowl practice schedules around recruiting.
We're going back many years in that conversation. And I always thought it was crazy and a lot to expect from the coaches where they're trying to get ready for these games are important. I mean, they're really important to fan bases. They're important. Some guys are trying to save their jobs in a lot of cases. And their attention is so it's split all over. It's splintered all over the place. This helps a lot. Just we can prep. You know what we can do? We can get ready for the game. How about that?
And we don't have to fly around the country and like what you'd have to do. So if Matt Rule had 20 commits, he would almost have to get in-homes done with all 20 because the head coach used to be able to or could go see every guy once. So that was really important in December to fly Matt Rule around to see 20 guys.
Right. And so that takes away from his own preparation for the ball game, right?
Right. And so then you'd have to, what you would do is you'd have your bowl practices on the weekends.
Right.
And then you'd have them with recruits on campus and you still might have like a Thursday practice or something or a during the week practice, but then like graduate assistants and other coaches would like run those practices. Remember?
I remember vividly, Sean. It was odd to me. It's always been odd.
There'd be 10 out or 9 out. Back then it was 9. And you might have 2 or 3 stay in and then like 6 or 7 go out.
And I want to be clear. I never heard a coach complain. I've never heard any coach complain to me about it. I just thought it was silly.
So the signing day though is moving up to the first Wednesday in December.
Right.
And that's another reason kind of why they're
so get the signing day done and then get ready for the bowl game. Makes sense, right?
The playoff, the bowl game, and then they're going to fatten up January and expand the days out in January.
So there you go. And these are good moves.
And so January will let you maybe find some more 2025 guys.
There you go.
But the focus of January really will be 2026.
Yeah, juniors
that you're going to go out and go after.
Yeah.
Because you have to find those 26 guys, get them on campus, and then get them here for their official visits. I mean, the recruiting window for a high school junior now, just so you understand this, it really, really ramps up at the end of their junior year. And then in January, the coaches go out on the road heavy to see more of those guys. And then you're trying to get them on campus in March and April.
Okay.
And then you're trying to get them back again in June for their official. Then they commit. I mean, that's the window now.
You got to drive that point home to a lot of people because it's still relatively new. The other change that's really, really smart, which is it's extending the July dead period, it's a 31 calendar day dead period that begins July 1 and is intended to allow coaches to prepare for the upcoming season without focusing on recruiting. Again, makes a lot of sense, right?
So what used to be the case, and what's the case still this year, is they've always added this back end of July week. So the final week of July, there's 7 days where you can host unofficial visitors, not officials.
Right.
And you'd bring these kids in, and if you didn't do, you could even run a camp if you wanted to run a prospect camp, but if you didn't do something, it would be like you're not doing your job. So coaches everywhere felt obligated to kind of put together a recruiting event on that last week of July.
That butts right up against the start of your camp.
And it was
preseason camp.
It's just a lot.
Preseason camp. Now, I don't know that I would say this as much as I wouldn't say this emphatically as I used to say it, but I always thought August, which we call preseason camp in our business, I thought that was the most stressful time of the year almost. And now I don't know that I'd say that now because it's changed.
Because there's no 2 days.
Right. It's not as much hitting. It's just not as intense as it used to be. It's still pretty intense.
They're going to live in the dorms and do some different things like they did last year, but
it's still really important. I mean, let's put it this way. Oftentimes you have a quarterback battle. You have position battles, and it gets hot literally and figuratively. I mean, that's Sean, when I think back on my career covering Nebraska football, a lot of my memories are from August. Just coach blow-ups, big-time injuries, guys going down that you need in practice, and then the ensuing conversation and how intense it is because, Coach A might need a 9-win season.
There were days where Bo, you just didn't want to be near him in August.
Well, other coaches too.
But Bo, I mean, like there were days.
You saw it with Bo. You saw you definitely saw the stress, the strain during that time with Bo during August. Remember,
he banned me from a week for reporting on Bubba Starling.
Yeah, you saw it. You saw it on a lot of staffs over the years, but yeah, particularly that one. And he was under. I mean, I'll defend Bo a little bit. He was winning 9 and 10 games. And he's always under fire. I mean, I don't need to say what a 9 or 10 win season would do now.
And people back then stuck their nose up to it.
Right. So he was always trying to win 9 or 10, knowing he still could get fired. It's not a good life.
Well, and this is a whole other show discussion, but like you think about that time. I mean, Eichhorst just basically did what he was told. Yeah. Like he was brought in by Harvey Perlman
to ignore Bo,
to fire Bo Pelini.
Yeah, to ignore him and then fire him.
Like that was like
make him feel as uncomfortable as you possibly
Harvey can. Quickly realized with Tom Osborne as the AD, Bo Pelini was never gonna get fired.
I mean, I hope people don't think we're just talking off the cuff. We're not. I mean, I covered it every single day. I mean, he made that staff, we don't need to single out Bo, feel really uncomfortable. I mean, it was really uncomfortable. Just on the surface, guys, we probably need to win 10 to survive. Okay. Great.
Yeah, they blew that Minnesota game. Mm-hmm. And you just wonder if they would have won that game and still beat Iowa, they would have been 10-2.
Yeah, the theme they always would say is, guys, no big purchases. I mean, because we don't know what's going to happen.
Life of a coach.
Yeah.
All right. Before we take it to headline number 4, Husker Headlines, brought to you by our friends at Omaha Steaks. And I said this earlier, I was with Nate Rempe, Husker, Nebraska graduate, president, CEO, Omaha Steaks, Monday night. We were talking. He's like, man, Sean, you guys are selling a lot of steaks on Husker Online. I get the reports. Good. Your listeners and viewers are taking advantage of it. And he's like, we're going to keep this deal rolling. OmahaSteaks.com. They're giving you 50% off on a lot of these packages right now, but we are going to give you another $30 off that. So our friends, Husker graduate, Nate Rempe, Omaha Steaks, are giving you 50% off. We're going to give you another $30 off. You got to use the promo code though, HuskerOnline at checkout, and get loaded up. There's still time to get that order in for the big 4th of July barbecue. I know Steve Sipple is getting ready to probably hit a lot of barbecues on July 4th.
Yeah, I don't know I really don't have any solid plans right now, but this would, I mean, if it includes Omaha Steaks, that'd be wonderful.
I got a flat top grill this summer, a Weber flat top, and man, I've just gone, like with the Omaha Steaks things we have, I've just gone to town. And I've done a lot of grilling and Traeger stuff over the years. Flat top grilling is fun.
Really?
Because, I mean, you can literally just put like 8 things on there all at once and be done in like 10 minutes. And it's really good.
You are like a chef. Chef Sean.
The only problem when it's 105 degrees,
what?
It's a little hot.
Just dab your head. get a washcloth, a cold one, and dab your head, and you'll be fine.
Thank you to Omaha Steaks. Use that promo code HuskerOnline to get $30 off the already 50% off they're offering right now. Okay, headline number 4. 2026 quarterbacks are flying off the shelf. And, you know, I had a couple of our Husker Online subscribers message me concerns about this. And Brian Stumpf.
What's the concern?
Just that, you know, are you concerned Nebraska doesn't really have like a 2026 quarterback picked out yet, like who they really want to zone in on or who the lead dog is?
I'm trying to figure out why that would be a concern.
Oh, well, because of what's happened in the last few days. I mean, there's been 10 power programs that have already taken commits from 2026 quarterbacks.
These are players, so people understand. These are players going into their junior season
that have only maybe sophomore film and some that could have freshman film.
Right.
But you're really basing your full quarterback evaluation off of 15-year-olds.
It's really interesting.
And
it's really interesting.
Brian Stumpf, who we've had on this show before, from the Elite 11, brought up some great points this week on social media about, you know, this run of 2026 quarterbacks. It's really not doing your due diligence.
It's rushed evaluation, he said. It's rushed evaluation.
You're just not going to be able to fully know. And I think, sure, you would love to have the senior year, but the junior year is so important.
Absolutely. Now, you're the resident expert. Why do these teams, and like you said, 10 power conference teams, why do they feel a need to rush it?
Low-hanging fruit if they can get it. But the thing is, do you feel like those kids are fully bought in? Like, what if like a bigger program then comes their way? They're going to bail.
Well, I know, but what I would say to that would be, you still got to do it. You understand that.
Or if the kid struggles and is not what you think,
well,
then you kind of, you know, ignore them.
Right. This has been a conversation for many years now. Not that this many have offered this early. I've told the story 4 times. Danny Langsdorff in 2016 was headed off on a Friday to watch an 8th grade quarterback in California. So you're really projecting at that point. But you saw Ace Amina.
And he blew up.
And you saw him at the camp. Now, what grade's he in? 9th grade?
Going into 9th.
He was an 8th grader,
but
essentially.
He's going to Bishop Gorman.
I know, but there are cases that you can see the talent that early. There are cases.
Rare, but you're right. I mean, you think about when you were in 8th grade.
Oh, God. Yeah, I couldn't throw the ball 25 yards.
I mean,
I weighed 100 pounds.
My daughter's going in 5th grade. I couldn't even imagine 3 years from now, kids her age getting Nebraska offers.
Getting calls from coaches. Really?
Well, they can't call you.
Okay. Well,
they have to offer you. There's rules. Like you can't just call an 8th grader.
Yeah. I hope that's the rule. That would be.
I mean, I'll say this, like even in my shoes, like I'm not comfortable ever calling someone that young. No. Like I will speak to their coach or their parent.
Guardian.
I got to call an 8th grade kid.
No. So like that's what you're seeing.
Daniel Kalen was offered really young. People forget that him and Dylan Raiola were offered as freshmen.
Yep. And you know, that now that you fast forward kind of makes sense, right?
They developed.
I mean, they developed into guys those coaches probably saw something in the 8th grade that looks like something that they see now from these guys.
And it's got to be tough if you're like, I'll use like a local guy, Jet Tamala. He's going into his junior year at Millard South. He's done everything right to this point, you know, and doesn't have an offer yet. And so, you know, and he's got tons of D1 talent around him, but he's kind of being held back a little bit. People want to watch him play. But then you see, you know, Brady Quinn, who's an 8th grader, or Ace Amina, who's an 8th grader.
We saw these guys, so we can speak with some authority. Brady Quinn was an example of a young guy that could really throw it. I mean, you saw the touchdown passes he threw in that Friday Night Lights camp indoors. I mean, he can really wing it for a ninth grader, or not, not just for a ninth grader, for anybody. Yeah.
So yeah, I also think if other teams offer a guy, you have to throw your hat in.
That's right. There's just some pressure to do
just to feel a part of it. So we don't know, back to 2026 for Nebraska, what direction they're going. I still think the safest assumption is Dayton Raiola.
Yeah.
If Dayton Raiola goes in to Buford, starts like he's projected to, and I know they brought in some transfer
as a junior.
There's a transfer kid they brought in who's got pedigree too, but I still think Dayton Raiola is the favorite to start there.
See, right now all he has is a Charlotte offer and an Appalachian State offer and a Nebraska offer.
And Mickey Joseph's staff offered him first, and he was re-offered by the Rule staff. So I've seen Dayton. He has really, really progressed. And if he comes out and looks like that this year, I mean, I think it's safe to say he's the guy, especially if Dylan has a good year.
The thing about the Raiolas that's really appealing to me is their intangibles. You've met Dayton. Obviously, we've met Dylan. They're really good kids. They really love football. They have a passion for the sport. So they study it. They understand it. They understand football at a super high level, and they happen to have arm talent. I mean, so that and Dayton is a little different than Dylan because he'll run it a little bit more.
And I think he'll be bigger than Dylan.
Really?
Well,
he's 6'1", 205. That's pretty big right now. You're right. He might be. Although Dylan's a big horse now.
Dylan's 235 probably.
He's 6'3", 235. You think Dylan's
two full years of high school still here.
Even if he's comparable in size, that's good size.
The nutrition, I know the Raiolas, I mean, they really follow a strict plan.
Yeah.
I mean, like Dom, he orders all his meat from Piedmontese and gets like high level healthy cuts of steak.
Well, they're very health conscious.
Yeah, like they I mean, that's one thing, like growing up in Columbus and South Omaha, and like
we ate a lot of beef jerky.
Like you weren't getting your steaks from Piedmontese like delivered to your house. I mean,
my mom cooked well.
That's where, I mean, I do think in general, like nutrition has advanced so much.
Yeah.
And that's where you see some of these kids, they're really like developing. And
Dylan's a true freshman, and we talk about him like he's a place for the
Chiefs.
Yeah, exactly.
But
true freshman.
Okay, before we close the show, take it to headline number 5. HuskerOnline headlines again brought to you by Zipline Brewing, and particularly the new beer ZipLite just hit the shelves. Really, really great product. 95 calories, 2.7 carbs. You can find it at a lot of your favorite places that carry Zipline. If you can't find it there, I can guarantee you'll find it in any one of their beer halls or restaurants around Omaha and Lincoln. That's ZipLite. We're proud to have them sponsor this week's shows here on the Husker Online channel. Also, if you're not a member of Husker Online, try us out. 2 months for $1. Promo code NU1. That's 2 months for $1. Promo code is NU1. Okay, odds and ends. And I kind of, sometimes we struggle with a good, solid fifth headline, but we've got a lot of things on our mind.
Oh, come on. That's not true.
That we want to cover. And so we got some good odds and ends here. I want to start first with the Directors Cup. Nebraska finishes number 22 in the Directors Cup standings. It's their highest finish since 2010. It's their highest finish since joining the Big Ten. So the 2023-24 sports year is the best overall year Nebraska athletics has had since becoming a member of the Big Ten Conference. And to put it more into perspective, they finished third in the league overall in the Directors Cup standings, only behind Ohio State and I believe Michigan.
That is exactly right.
They were ahead of Penn State. They were ahead of Wisconsin.
That's exactly right.
So you look at that, and I know it. You and I kind of joke about you don't really get too into the Directors Cup, but it is notable that this is the best sports year Nebraska's had since joining the Big Ten.
It is notable, and we also should give voice to the 7 Nebraska programs that recorded top 10 national finishes. Because that's significant. That's a significant achievement. Volleyball, okay, runner-up, national runner-up. John Cook kind of, can I say this? Sort of sets the tone for the athletic department. Can I say that? I think he probably does. Women's soccer. John Walker has a huge year. I mean,
almost made the Final Four.
Yeah, John Walker late in his career. I mean, I remember interviewing John Walker when
last time you talked to John Walker.
Probably the last time we had any sort of meaningful discussion was when he got hired. And I'm going to say 30 years ago. I mean, something like
He's
that.
going to be like, yeah, what happened, Sip? You never called me after 30
Bowling.
years.
Women's. Paul Klempa is a friend of mine. God bless him. He loves the band Boston, and Klempa's a great dude. Men's gymnastics, rifle, wrestling, women's outdoor track and field, all top 10 national finishes.
Both basketball teams made the tournament.
Yes, good. They went to
Well, and the men's track team won the Big Ten. They didn't maybe finish in the top 10 nationally, but they won the Big Ten.
Yeah, so it was a good year across. It was, and I don't know. I think you should give some credit to Trev Alberts there.
And even the tennis.
Do you give credit to the?
Well, who did he hire of these coaches? The only credit you give him is he kind of shook the stick in front of people, and
you really bristle when we
because he didn't make these coach hires. He doesn't recruit the athletes.
He sets the tone for the athletic department
by cutting people's pay.
No, he sets the tone for the athletic department. I'm not, and I feel uncomfortable in the position of having to defend Trev Alberts after what he pulled, but I think you have to give him credit. He did lead the department. If you're on one hand going to say, well, Schlossnagle left under his watch, then you have to say, well, these teams thrived under his watch.
But
so,
Troy Dannon will get the bonus.
Yeah.
He gets the bonus for it. You know that? There's a bonus. They get a bonus on this. Yeah, they get a bonus. It's
Trev's
a big
doing okay.
Maybe Trev's going to ask Dannon for a cut of that bonus.
Trev's doing just fine.
No, yeah, you're right. I think the biggest thing is Trev Alberts knew how to hold people accountable.
Absolutely.
And kind of get under their skin to drive them. Like, look, he got under Fred Hoiberg. You know he did.
Well, Trev,
he pushed him.
See, I'm going to give him credit. He came in and said, winning matters. It matters. It has to matter. Now, I'm not saying that Bill Moose, it didn't matter, but it's a matter of emphasis. Like, I can go back to Eichhorst. I never got the feeling that winning was that big of a deal under Eichhorst. It was kind of pampering the athletes.
He was just worried about not getting sued.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's kind of like that. But Trev brought that sort of former athlete mentality. You know, he was a high-level competitor. And yeah, okay, now here's the thing about bosses. A lot of times you don't like the ones that are the best ones. Sometimes that's a cue, actually, that your best boss you might think's an ass because he demands a lot, but the operation's really effective. I've had that in my career.
Well, like Trev,
bosses that I didn't like to see them, but man, the operation was rolling. It was rolling.
You worked hard because you're so angry.
You were accountable.
You wanted to show this SOB.
Right. They held you accountable. I mean, these guys that I'm thinking about, that's what it was. If you got beat on a store, you were held accountable. You kind of like the bosses maybe that were soft. It was easier on you, but the operation is better. And I think Trev is a little bit of an example of that.
Well, like go back to Fred Hoiberg. I mean, his initial personnel style with Matt Abdelmasseh wasn't working.
What happened?
And I think there were some tough conversations behind the scenes. You need to change what you're doing because what you're doing now is not working. And they made changes.
No, there was no doubt there's those conversations. I know they were.
And
Robin would back you.
Fred took a pay cut.
Yeah, took a pay cut, got shaved. That's hard.
Now that I'll tell you, within the community of coaches is frowned upon. And if I'm Schlossnagle, he probably didn't like when you see the athletic director take contracts that the institutions agree to and say you need to cut it down now because we don't think you're getting it done. Like that comes around.
Yeah.
So I do think some of that stuff for Trev, he made Frost take a cut, he made Hoiberg take cuts, but you don't really see
when those happen though. You understood.
They don't really happen that often though.
No, but you understood.
Okay. Odds and ends, continuing the discussion. Nebraska roster numbers. We hit on this earlier, but 80 freshmen, 46 true freshmen, 34 redshirt freshmen.
You made a great point that Nebraska could literally have a freshman team right now. That'd be incredible. There'd be nobody to play, but
play like
I don't know how
they'd play like NAIA teams locally.
You go play Doan, and it'd be a big deal. And tell me that's the fascinating thing of this conversation. If they had a freshman team and it went to play a few games, 5 or 6, 3 or 4
they'd
games,
get like 6,000
it'd
fans.
be huge. We'd cover the hell out of it. think of some of the players that would be playing.
So when I was a sports director at KRNU in college, I know back in the day, way before my time, KRNU would air they would air the freshman games on the radio.
Sean, I worked at the Journal-Star during that period,
and they were Fridays.
They were big games,
and the student radio was the only media coverage of those games back then. On the radio.
Yeah, I was gonna say because I covered it. I mean, one of my first. It was glorious. Shane Thorell was the head coach of the freshman team. His name was Shane Thorell. And Shane, for some reason, said, okay, you're the beat writer for us. I was the beat writer for the Daily Nebraskan. He said, Friday mornings at 7 a.m. every Friday, you can call me and I'll give you whatever you need. So I had a conference call, just Daily Nebraskan beat writer with the head freshman coach every Friday. I'll never forget it as long as I live. It was incredible. He treated me like I worked at Sports Illustrated. I barely knew what I was doing. But Shane Thorell was
the last freshman game at Nebraska was Matt Turman was the quarterback.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That had to be around 1992
or 91.
Yeah. Early 90s.
And the NCAA, once they changed the scholarship limits, that's when that went away.
Yeah.
Because it used to be I think it went from 95 to 85.
I think so. I don't remember this. I don't remember the particulars. I just remember they would play Ellsworth. They'd play Air Force. There was an Ellsworth Junior College that they would play, and Air Force Academy that they would play. I think you could. I mean, and freshman football back then would count for a year of eligibility.
Did it? Yeah. So back in the day, the model under Tom Osborne was you'd play your freshman year on the freshman team. Then the next year you would redshirt and you'd play scout team.
That's right. That's exactly.
Then if you were good enough, you got to make one of the 3 units.
Yeah, and they had some pretty good freshman coaches. Bill Bush, and Jerry Godowski were co-head coaches at one point. I think it's possible that Frank Solich at one point.
Scott Downing was one. Frank Solich was. Dan Young. My uncle Tom Ritter was the head freshman coach.
Is that
for
right?
Broderick Thomas.
You're kidding me.
Him and Scott Downing.
Your uncle? Really?
He was the head freshman coach.
So they were co-head coaches?
I don't know how that all worked. I mean, but I think they both were together.
It's another time, Sean. That's another time.
Now you're going to have the money to actually you could do it though with these coaching rules.
Yeah, but now wait a second though. Not would schools have enough players to do it?
Not really.
Nebraska is an anomaly right now.
No, like Matt Rule though, if they put a roster cap on, I wrote this a couple weeks ago in Tunnel Talk. His idea is can't they just have a taxi squad, a practice squad that's not on that capped roster?
Oh,
and all they do is practice and do things and come in and practice, and they're not suited up on game days.
Well, could you find players to do that?
I think it would be a tough sell
to the players
unless there was a path to get called up.
There you go. Yeah,
you'd have to
like in the NFL.
Yeah, you couldn't just say but in most cases you probably would never get called up.
Right.
All right. Final thing here. I want to hit on this too. The Nebraska Board of Regents last week agreed to a contract with Flick. It is a food catering service that primarily only works with professional athletes, like with the NFL, the NBA, other leagues like that. Nebraska becomes their first college partner, and it's a $6 million deal annually that Nebraska is going to pay Flick to provide food for the training table. And I guess I never really knew that even before they had a deal with a company. I just didn't. It never really registered on my radar.
Yeah.
But Nebraska, to put it in perspective, spent about $4 million a year in food not that long ago, 2 years ago, and it's already up to $6 million. So they have a heavy commitment towards feeding the student athletes, and Flick is going to be their new partner.
Yeah, I think some people would be amazed how good the food is. I mean, I've just gone over there on occasion just to meet, random meeting with an AD or something like that. And they say, well, just come over to the training table. We'll eat there. Ooh, it's good.
Well, and
that's the only insight I can get.
I was talking with Nate Rempe at Omaha Steaks, and I mean, they're in a position that they could be like a protein provider for Flick. I mean, they get their meats and things from places like that. So there's a lot of opportunity there for local people to work with Flick, I'm guessing, in terms of food and other things. But $6 million.
Yeah, Think about it. That's the kind of stuff you don't think about and that you might think about more on June 28th or whatever the hell it is. What is it?
But I mean, you just think about how much money that is.
Sounds sizable. Yeah. I mean, athletes are treated really well. I mean, they get clothes provided. Now they're getting paid, and some of them large sums of money. They eat the finest foods. They get the finest medical care.
They get free apartment deals, car deals.
Right. They are treated super well, and they were treated super well before NIL. I mean, so, keep that in mind.
All right. Well, lots to keep up on. Plenty of commit news. Jeremiah Jones is going to announce Monday.
Okay.
There's a few other ones like Bryson Weber, Brian Tapu that we're going to keep close tabs on. Obviously, in-state news. So stay on Husker Online. We'll have great coverage. And by the way, next week we will have shows. We're not taking the holiday week off.
What are we doing?
So Monday will be Husker Online show. July 3rd, Wednesday, we're going to come in the morning and get a headlines done.
Monday's just a normal work day.
Yeah, and Wednesday, I think we'll post a normal show Wednesday. So if you're traveling for the 4th, we got you covered. We'll have 2 shows still.
Okay, good.
All right.
Good
Well,
job. I don't have many major plans, Sean. So
we're going to Colorado next week, but we'll get the shows in.
Okay. Good job.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us here on Husker Online Headlines. Again, thanks to Zipline, our presenting sponsor here for this week's shows on the Husker Online channel.